Valery Zaluzhny, Ukraine's commander-in-chief, has become the candid voice of a nation at war, a contrast to President Zelensky's necessarily diplomatic front. We're peering into the frank admission of a war locked in a deadly embrace of attrition and technology, where the next chapter seems penned with the same uncertainty and desperation that filled the trenches of the First World War. Zaluzhny laid it out bare in conversations with The Economist. He's talking about a stagnant front line where no amount of patriotic zeal seems to push the needle. This isn't a Hollywood movie where the good guys just need a rousing speech to turn the tides. The support of Ukraine is like ordering a next-generation console. It's on back order until at least 2024 or 2025, and by then, who knows what the game will look like. This isn't just about numbers and hardware, it's about people. People getting tired, governments getting wary, with Zelensky himself admitting that the West is starting to doze off, even as they're assuring him the reality check that those F-16s, even if they do come, might arrive too late for a game that's already moved on. And to drive a mere 40 are still soaring. But don't mistake Zaluzhny's realism for defeatism. It's a strategic laying out of the cards, a hope that transparency might lead to action. Zaluzhny echoes this sentiment, emphasizing that Ukraine is still fighting, still liberating, and still standing. Yet he's not blind to the fact that Putin is not one to rest on his laurels, with time and military resources playing in his favor, not to mention a population advantage of 3.5 times. Oleksiy Izhak of the National Institute for Strategic Studies. Hello, and thank you very much for joining us today on Eastern Express.
Hello.
Now, sobering assessment and admission of reality by the Commander-in-Chief, Zaluzhny, as well as President Zelensky at this time, would you say that this is an inflection point for Ukrainian authorities at this point in the war?
It's difficult, maybe it's a difficult point, but it's a difficult point from point of view of strategic communication, because what General Zaluzhny wrote for The Economist, it's not new for other parts of security establishment of Ukraine, and certainly it's not new for our partners in terms of military communication and military help. So what happened? It was public communication to make it better understood what is happening on the battlefield before it would convert into some conspirology theories about what happenings. A lot of people in Ukraine, certainly, we waited for quick counter-offensive, quick deoccupation. We hoped for it, and it happened that no big changes for several months, except changes on south in Crimea and the Black Sea. And so it was like strategic communication that created a lot of discussion. And I would say the main problem of the discussions is specific translation, because this text was in English, and when it was translated into Ukraine, this term stalemate in the war was translated like dead end in the war. It's not correct, but possible. So I believe some discussions and some anxiety may be removed with just better understanding of what exactly General Zaluzhny said.
Okay, well, one thing that President Zelensky did say at the one-year anniversary, and this is well before the one-year anniversary of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and this is well before the beginning of the counteroffensive, the latest counteroffensive, is that if this next counteroffensive, he said at the time, isn't successful, that will definitely hamper Ukraine's ability to garner further support from the West. Do you think that I believe it was true at the time, do you believe that still holds true now?
It's obviously that getting help from our partners and exactly United States is more difficult. But I think it's not just because of these difficulties in counter-offensive. But yes, if Ukraine would be more successful, it would be easier to get a next big package for the next year. But now we have problems with attitude towards Ukraine in the US, and it's not connected exactly to what is happening on the battlefield. But generally, I think it is still possible, and I would say it's likely that Ukraine would get another package for another year. With different priorities for weapons and technologies, and it is certainly that European Union and our partners would provide assistance without delays. So it's true, but it's not so tragic as it would be.
One of the United States' fatal flaws in its longest ever war, that was in Afghanistan, is that it never laid out a clear set of objectives that it wanted to accomplish and a timeline of when it wanted to accomplish them. The Republicans in the House of Representatives in the U.S. Have said that they will offer support and assistance to Ukraine, but only if they can clearly identify certain milestones of success and set objectives. Do you think that that's part of what may have previously been lacking in Ukraine?
Possibly yes, but these publications in The Economist suggest that this communication with the United States about what would be a milestone and what is the final point of this war, I believe Ukraine have already started to provide. And to say the aim of this war for the United States is not so obscure. It was defined even on the beginning of support. And the aim is to allow Ukraine to start negotiations with Russia from the point of view of force, on better position. And it is not achieved now, as many hoped, but it's possible to achieve this state of on the battlefield when Ukraine would start dictate conditions for peace.
Ukraine has proven itself to be very innovative. If we look at the domestic industrial military complex in Ukraine and its significant advancement since the full-scale invasion, let's just rewind a little bit to when Russia launched its full-scale invasion. Many were skeptical that Kiev would stand beyond 3 to 5 days. That was proven not to be the case. And so my question now is, the weapons that are being produced domestically, can they provide capabilities for Ukraine to make significant advances, even if United States and Western European or European Union aid dries up over the next couple months?
In case of delay, I believe Ukraine can withstand it, but in general terms, to win this war without Western support, it's impossible. It's possible to freeze this war, but it's impossible to win this war without Western support with weapons and technologies. But what Ukraine can do itself, and it's very important, I believe the new breakthrough with Ukraine technologies after drones, it may be means of demining. It's a it's very untypical situation with Russian fortification on Ukrainian territory and these huge landmines in depth for kilometers, even for 20 kilometers, and with automatic means of mining. So no one partner of Ukraine has technology to overcome these huge landmine fields. And Ukraine is developing tools for demining, for breaking through these landmine fields. And I would suggest that it would be the next big breakthrough in technology for Ukraine, which might be called as Ukrainian breakthrough, not our partners, but the Ukrainian breakthrough. But generally, without Western support, I think it's almost impossible to win this war, only to freeze this war.
There has also been talk of employing a new strategy. This is not the same war that it was a year ago. Therefore, and I think you really well just touched upon that, the minefields that are along these very long dug-in positions by the Russians. How do you think that strategy changes now moving forward?
I believe we can now see how it changes, and generally what General Zaluzhny wrote is about this changing strategy. And changing is that there is no miracle weapon. There is no Wunderwaffe in this war. There is a combination of competences, capabilities, and technologies. I think in terms of waging war, I believe we can see now, we will see some change of main of geography of this conflict. We have achieved big progress on the south with opening corridors for Ukrainian grain, with opening Black Sea corridors, and it's because of successful operation in occupied Crimea and occupied parts of Ukraine on the south. I believe it's also part of this new strategy, diversification of geography of this war, and also technology, and also I believe some tactics on the battlefield.
Okay, well, we'll definitely be observing closely and hoping for a breakthrough in Ukrainians' technological abilities. Alexei Izak from the National Institute of Strategic Studies, and thank you very much for joining me for this conversation today.
Thank you.
And now it's time to move on to the Eastern News Flash, a series of all the latest stories from the East that you don't want to miss. In its latest annual assessment, the European Commission has reported on Serbia's and Kosovo's progress towards EU membership. Both nations are facing significant hurdles in crucial areas, from the rule of law to freedom of expression, casting a shadow on their EU aspirations.
The European Commission's annual report has raised serious concerns about Serbia's and Kosovo's journeys towards EU accession. While the two Western Balkan nations have shown great determination in their pursuit of membership in the bloc, the report highlights significant challenges they still must overcome. One of the key areas of concern in the report is limited progress in the crucial domain of rule of law reform. Serbia dragging its feet in this area is raising eyebrows in Brussels. The report also underscores Belgrade's failure to implement past agreements related to its dialogue with Kosovo. The European Commission is urging both Kosovo and Serbia to begin enforcing their obligations under these agreements, emphasizing their vital role in the EU accession process.
After a Georgian man was killed by Russian troops near the line of control between Georgia and South Ossetia, European diplomats renewed calls for Russia to withdraw from the region. Tensions are still escalating 15 years after the Russian-Georgian War.
Russian troops patrolling Georgia's border with breakaway South Ossetia reportedly killed a Georgian man trying to enter a church in the nearby village. The area had previously been off limits to Georgians due to Russian soldiers' restrictions imposed earlier this year. European diplomats condemned the killing and once again demanded that Moscow withdraw its illegal presence from the region. EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell expressed strong disapproval, calling for the immediate release of another Georgian man who was detained during this incident. Russia's presence in Georgia's breakaway regions is a violation of international law. Moscow informally took control of both regions, South Ossetia and Abkhazia, following the 2008 Russian-Georgian War. The West called the move an illegal annexation.
NATO member countries are taking decisive steps regarding the Cold War-era Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe. The move comes just hours after Russia's withdrawal from the pact and reflects concerns over regional security.
NATO member countries are suspending their commitments under the Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe as a response to Russia's recent withdrawal from the same agreement. The treaty, signed in November 1990, aimed to prevent the massing of conventional military forces along the borders of NATO and Warsaw Pact countries during the Cold War. Moscow cited the enlargement of NATO and the United States' actions as reasons for its withdrawal, ultimately blaming the two for undermining the post-Cold War security order. However, the White House points out that Russia had been violating its commitments under the treaty since the year 2007. This development is the latest in a series of actions that have weakened other major arms control treaties, including the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty or the New START Treaty.
And that's all in this episode of Eastern Express. Thanks for riding with us, and stay with us for more here on TVP World.